Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, we are at the beginning of the end. The new Countermeasure Series 3. Now, before we get into it, and I do the whole title reveal thing like I normally do, even though it's kind of redundant because you clicked on the video, you saw what I'm reviewing, I just want to clarify this. The new Countermeasure Series 3, unlike all of the previous box sets, was done as single releases. So instead of trying to tackle everything all at once in one video, instead I'm going to dedicate a video to each release. And instead of pacing them a month apart like I did with the box sets, I'm going to be releasing them weekly. So without further ado, let's start talking about the first story of the new Countermeasure Series 3, The Hollow King. Released in July 2019, written by Ian Potter, directed by Ken Bentley. The Hollow King stars Simon Williams as Group Captain Ian Gilmore, Pamela Salem as Professor Rachel Jensen, Karen Gledhill as Dr. Allison Williams, and Hugh Ross as Sir Toby Kinsella. As always, since I do this unscripted, I am putting a blanket spoiler warning in place, just in case I do decide to talk about spoilers. So if you do not want to be spoiled for the events of the Hollow King, in the description box below is the link to Big Finish's website, where you can purchase the new countermeasures, the Hollow King. And also one more thing to note, all throughout this series, I've said I've listened to most of the series ahead of time before reviewing. And by that I mean, I first got the series and listened to it leisurely. And only now, for the purpose of these reviews, have I been re-listening to them. The Hollow King was the last story I listened to. Prior to my review series here. There are two more stories ahead of this. Possibly one more. I think the last two stories are a two-parter. And I have not heard them. So when we get to those last two stories, from here on out, I will be going in blind. And that being said, there is a bit of history here to talk about. There's a lot to talk about behind the scenes in regards to the Hollow King. So let's go back a little bit to the new Countermeasure Series 2. I talked about this last time as well. As I mentioned, David Richardson realized it was the 50th anniversary of the Web of Fear. And Big Finish hadn't done anything to celebrate the story. So they dropped what was originally going to be the finale of the new Countermeasure Series 2 and replaced it with Time of the Intelligence. The Hollow King is the story they dropped. And actually, before I get into my own personal thoughts on that, Big Finish, I think the year or two after it was released, I should have double-checked the timeline of releases for this. Big Finish decided to discontinue the Countermeasure series, citing poor sales. The Hollow King was originally going to be the final release of the range. Because it was already completed, they just decided to drop it for another story for Series 2. And in either regard, either dropping it as the finale to the new Countermeasure Series 2, or doing those last two stories for Series 3, I'm really glad it's not the finale for the series or the range, because as a story, it's fine. As a finale, it's kind of lackluster, and had things stayed the way they are, I would say this would have been the weakest finale in the entire range. Even when things get really hit and miss or kind of dodgy, the finales for countermeasures are often highlights of this series. And I'm gonna shoot, what was that? What's that phrase? I'm gonna level with you. Wow, I can't believe I forgot that. If after I finish this series, if I planned to do a ranking of all the stories, most likely all 6 finales. So, State of Emergency from Series 1, Sins of the Father from Series 2, Unto the Breach from Series 3, Clean Sweep from Series 4, A Gamble with Time from the new Countermeasure Series 1, and Time of the Intelligence from the new Countermeasure Series 2. All 6 of them would have probably made the top 10. Anyway, that's beside the point. So let's that was a bit of a tangent, but it just goes to my point saying that if this story remained a finale, it would have been very lackluster. It's a fine story, nothing really good, nothing really bad, mostly meh with some good moments. But I'm just glad it's not a finale. Was the point of that entire tangent? Wow, we're off to a bad start here. So anyway, let's sort of move on. When I first heard this story, I found it very dull, I'm going to be honest. I thought it had the same problems as the new Countermeasure Series 1. Very mundane, very samey. I don't know what happened, because when I re-listened to this for my review, I found I liked it a lot more this time around. Still not one of the strongest stories in the range, but definitely better than I gave it credit for the first time. So, what is the team looking into this time? Well, there's a whole myriad of things going on here, and they're trying to find out how it's all connected, and then, of course, stop it. So, there have been mysterious UFO sightings, a self-help, let me get back to that point. And hospitals across the country have been filling up with patients suffering from some form of mental trauma. I forget exactly what it was, but they're delirious, they're hallucinating, all these sort of mental issues going on, like they've been drugged or something. And they all seem to be linked to this self-help guru and the compound that he has on his property, this sort of campground. Well, trying to get to the bottom of it and figure out how everything's linked and stop the threat, if necessary, the team decides to send Allison undercover as someone looking to expand her horizons on this compound. At one point, Rachel even says, "You're our most convincing hippie." Because, we've kind of seen this in the past. Throughout the course of the series, Alice is a very liberated young woman. She's got very liberal ideas. So, and she's very countercultural. She's very into the counterculture movement. In fact, oftentimes throughout this series, she's had a clash of ideals with Toby, who is very old, very stick in the mud, very traditional about this. Actually, that is a highlight of this story. This is one of those few stories that uses Allison really well. Like, I mentioned that in some of the weaker stories where the division of labor amongst the team is really bad, Allison kind of draws the short end of the stick. And now that I think about it too, a lot of times when they do try to utilize her better, she ends up being the damsel. So here we have a story where Allison is put to good use, although it still falls into the pitfall of Allison being the damsel. This is a fairly strong Allison-centric story. It very seldom cuts to the other characters, and they don't really have a lot to do. Like, Ian believes, this self-help guru, he believes the UFO sightings are his helicopter, so he goes and looks into it. Toby is overseeing everything, and Rachel is at the lab. Actually, that is one thing that's disappointing about this story. Rachel is the one who kind of gets pushed to the sidelines here. I mean, she makes some important contributions, narratively speaking. Like, she figures out what's going on and how to stop it. I'm gonna try, and I keep saying this. I keep saying I put a blanket spoiler warning in place, but because these are mystery stories, I'm gonna try and avoid the spoilers. And she figures out the way to stop it. But every time it cuts to her, she's still in the lab trying to figure things out, and it's a lot of wheel spinning. That being said, the pacing is really good, though. It's very briskly paced. Like, how do I want to put it into words? Well, nothing drags. Everything moves very rapidly, and yet the story does a good job of not feeling like things are progressing too fast. Like, it is a very good use of time. It is a very good use of pacing. Everything mostly feels earned. Like I said, you don't really feel lost until the end. That is one of the big issues with this story. Once again, it falls into that trap of putting so much suspicion on a character that, of course, they can't be the ones responsible. And it's kind of a shame. I kind of wish the perpetrator was that character. Because who is behind these goings on in this story are, well, prior to the reveal that they were the villains, they probably only had a scene that lasted maybe 20 seconds. So it's a very cheap reveal. I kind of feel like I'm being harsher on this story than I need to be because, like I said, I did enjoy it. But it's just, again, very samey, very mundane, very average. Well, actually, I'd put it slightly above average. There's not, performances are still all good. Like I said, Allison is really well handled. And when what's going on starts to affect her mind, the way it affected all the hospital patients, she plays it really well. The soundscape is really well done around her hallucinations, her trip, basically. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's the best I can come up with. Karen Gledhill is the standout performer here. Everyone else does well enough with what they're given, but that being said, really besides Allison, they don't have a lot to do. The new countermeasures, the Hollow King, is ultimately a very mixed bag. Like I said, and because of that, it's not, I'm really glad this was not a finale. This ended up not being a finale in any way, shape, or form. Because the new Countermeasure Series 3 is single releases, this is a release I would really recommend skipping, unless you're a die-hard fan of the series, or like me, a completionist. In fact, can you see it? Yeah, I have the complete series. But really, those are my thoughts, rambling and incoherent as they were. I should probably do a second take of this. Oh well. But what are your thoughts? Have you heard the new countermeasures, the Hollow King? Please start a conversation in the comment below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. And join me next week when we will look at the penultimate story of the new Countermeasure Series 3. Once again, Lady Suzanne Claire is back in the Mavellan Maneuver. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.